Dow Jones Industrial Average down about 800 points in the past 5 trading days. The Nasdaq down 3.5% in the past 5 trading days. The Russell 2000 small cap stocks down 4.5% in the past 5 trading days. Meanwhile, we have other stocks that are like, what? Market's going down? Oh, I didn't notice. Honest stock is a great example of that. That stock's up about 44% in the past 5 trading days to the highest level it's been in many, many years. On a stock now up 376% in the past year. Incredible move. Palantir is now up to a 235% move in the past year, up another 11% on Friday. The stock's incredible, right? Absolutely incredible. I'm having to consider, I've made 712% on the stock. I'm having to consider, do I want to sell 1,000 or 2,000 shares in December if this stock continues to roll and hits, let's say, $70, $75, something like that, right? Now, things are about to get really insane. I'm going to take you through what's going to transpire here over the next few days and likely into the end of the year. So you guys are all mentally prepared for what's about to transpire here, which is going to be some craziness, okay? So I'm going to get you guys prepared for all that mentally, okay? Additionally, where I want to react to 2 videos specifically here. This one about Nvidia and the folks' take on from Fast Money on what they think is going to happen with Nvidia stock here. And then also I want to react to their perspective on the Palantir surge with them moving to the Nasdaq and likely getting out of the queues and all that good stuff. So we'll react to that as well. By the way, appreciate everybody joining me as always. All I ask from you guys, one thing and one thing only. I hope it's not too much to ask. Hit that like button. Smash that like button. Do whatever you got to do to make that like button glow. I appreciate y'all for being here. Thank you for being subscribed also. We are at, by far, a new all-time high subscribers in the history of the channel. Appreciate y'all for being here. Pinned comment down there will be if you're looking for access to my entire library of premium courses. That includes Becoming Master of Stock Market, Millionaire Playbook, Stock Options Mastery, Dividend Investing Mastery. If you want to also access to my private Discord chat with the 6, 7, and 8-figure members, that will be pinned comment down there. Fill an application. We'll see if we can get you access to all that next week, okay? Alrighty, guys. So get ready to get your flapjacks flipped because we got insanity coming. Here's what's about to happen. So on Tuesday, we have big earnings coming. One from the biggest retailer in the world, Walmart. That's going to be massive, massive in regards to the market trying to get any clues about what's going on with the consumer. Is the consumer weakening? Are they strengthening? What does Walmart have to say about that, right? Lowe's is also another important one to kind of pay attention to a little bit more on the real estate market and trying to see as far as anything home related, right? Home improvement stores like Lowe's are always really good, them and Home Depot. Then on Wednesday, that's a whole other level because we're going to find out really what's going on, I think, with the consumer more in regards to Target. Because Target sometimes can go a little bit upstream in regards to middle class. So I think Target's more important to pay attention to if you want to know what's actually going on with the consumer than Walmart, right? Because Walmart can just get a lot of trade down in regards to their business, right? Now, the ultimate is Wednesday, right? You got Palo Alto Networks, you have Snowflake, which is going to be very interesting to see those 2 stocks, but you have Nvidia, and I'll tell you in just a moment what I think is going to happen with Nvidia. But keep in mind, Nvidia is going into this earnings report, the biggest stock in the entire world, right? And so this is the first time they're going to be going into an earnings report where they're the big dogs, like they're the biggest, right? So this is going to be huge for the entire financial markets. This, whatever happens with Nvidia, which I'll tell you in just a moment what I think is going to happen, but depending upon what happens with that stock price, it's going to move the entire semiconductor space. It's going to move AI stocks. It's going to move big tech stocks. It's going to move the entire Qs because it's the biggest weight, and it's going to move the S&P 500 because it's the biggest weight. So just keep in mind, this is like the biggest of the big. Like, we've had a busy earnings season. We've had almost everybody report that you'd want to report except for them. They are the big dog. And so that's going to really, if you want to know if we're going to get a Santa Claus rally into year end or not, watch Nvidia numbers, and they're going to tell us if we're going to get in a Santa Claus rally or not. Then on Thursday, we get Intuit, which is a very solid business model. I like them a lot. John Deere, we're going to get them the morning of Thursday, right? And then Ross, I think it's important to kind of pay attention to what's going on in the middle class, maybe under middle class in regards to kind of shopping trends there, okay? Now, what do I think is going to transpire here with Nvidia? Do I think they're going to miss? Do I think they're going to beat? What do I see happening with the stock price from here? And those sorts of things, okay? So here's what I think is going to happen. First thing you got to understand is looking at their earnings history over the past number of quarters, it's looking very, very good. I mean, it's incredible, right? $6 billion revenue, then $7 billion, $13 billion, $18 billion, $22 billion, $26 billion, $30 billion of revenue, right? Acceleration after acceleration after acceleration after acceleration. Incredible, right? And we really haven't gotten any signs yet that a deceleration is coming, right? If you just look at the increases, you know, there's nothing there that's like, ooh, Nvidia, they're starting to really grow much slower. No. They had a little less than $4 billion and then around a $4 billion increase there. So the numbers just keep climbing. They keep climbing, right? And then if we look at kind of projections here, in regards, by the way, in regards to EPS, 9 cents, 11 cents, 27 cents, 40 cents, 52 cents, 61 cents, and then 68 cents, right? So here's what I see happening for Nvidia. And as far as Nvidia stock price and these earnings, they've got beatable numbers. I think they're going to easily beat the revenue estimates for this past quarter. They should come in with 34 or 35 billion. And then next quarter, they should guide out to 38 billion on the low end, probably 40 billion or 41 billion on the high end, a real smash, projection for revenue there, right? So I see easily beat and a raise in terms of guidance, which is going to be extremely exciting for Nvidia stock in the short term. So do keep that in mind. It is going to be kind of more of a short-term excitement phase here. As far as earnings per share, I think they should easily come in and beat analyst estimates. Analysts, from my understanding, are around 74 cents of EPS. My opinion is they probably can come in with 76 cents on the low end to potentially like 81 cents on the high end. And if they guide out for anything in regards to EPS, it should be a much stronger guide than analysts are at as well. So the moral of the story is Nvidia is likely going to come in and quadruple beat, is my opinion, okay? And so analysts are going to have to bring up their price targets on the stock likely. They're going to have to raise revenue estimates. They're going to have to raise earnings per share estimates. And it's going to be a whole situation here in the short term that's very, very bullish for Nvidia stock in the short term, right? And so as far as the stock price goes, I believe the stock price is likely going to make a move to 150 to 200, which is what I've foreseen the whole year. If you guys, have been following me for the last year or two, my opinion on Nvidia has been very consistent. The stock goes 150, 200, and then from there the gains get very tough after that, once the stock moves into that 150 to 200 range. So if you're hoping to make a ton of money past 200 over the next few years, I think it's going to be very, very difficult. And here's why, okay? When you look at Nvidia's valuation, looking at 1000xstocks.com here, right, and kind of taking into account what analysts are expecting on average, here's the deal, okay? Trailing 12-month P is obviously about triple where an average stock trades at. Now, that's fine because Nvidia's growth rates have been outstanding, right? So that's perfectly fair. Forward P 44 in the stock, also fine because we know the growth rates are going to far exceed an average stock in the market next year, right? Where you run into some troubles here is this 2-year P's about 2x where the market in general trades out. Now, what's going to happen likely for the company, in my personal opinion, next year, right, the growth is going to be insane again for Nvidia. We're going to be talking about Nvidia growing revenues probably between, my guess is 25% on the low end and potentially up to 40% in 2025, right? So still extremely fast growth. Where issues start to happen in regards to Nvidia and Nvidia stock is in 2026. Because I believe growth rate for 2026 for Nvidia is going to likely go down somewhere between 10 and 15%, which is still good growth. But when you come off of like triple digit revenue growth and then like extremely strong double digit growth, and let's say you go down to 10, 15, or even like 17 or 19% growth, let's say even for instance, right? That causes a lot of problems for your stock, especially if you have a higher valuation. And then people start to wonder for 2027, are you going to grow? And we've seen several cycles, almost every cycle we've ever seen for Nvidia. The growth rates will be insane, right? Then they start to taper off, then they kind of flatline a little bit, and then pew, and then like a big sharp drawdown. And people are, come 2026, people will be asking about 2027 and kind of starting to fear, like, could Nvidia's numbers go negative in 2027, right? Now, in order for them to go negative in 2027, I think big tech in general is going to have to go through a tough time during that particular time period, right? But do keep in mind, by 2027, they'll also have a lot more competition from AMD specifically by that time. So do keep that in mind, right? So that kind of holds them back a little bit and could hurt margins and all those sorts of things. But the moral of the story is NVIDIA has a great setup short term. It has a tougher setup. And by the way, would I be willing to play any call options on these NVIDIA earnings, being that I think the stock could easily pop to 150, 200 range? No. No interest. Like, sweet, if that happens and everybody can make money, whoever buys calls or owns a stock, great for them. But as far as me personally, I have 0% interest in trying to play that game of, trying to gamble around these earnings. That's what I believe is going to happen, but no. Plus, you have to pay, you keep in mind on those call options, you have to pay big premiums on those as well. So it's not like you can get it for some cheap price, because I can almost guarantee you I'm not the only person in the market that believes Nvidia stock could pop to 150, 200 here in the short term, right? I'm sure there's other folks as well, and that pushes those premiums up. So, no, if Nvidia comes in, smash factory, quadruple beats, do keep in mind that's going to likely move tech in general, especially a lot of big techs. And I've always imagined Meta getting to like a $700 price point by the end of this year, essentially, right? And so stock's trading $554 here. So that's what I've always believed is going to play out. I still believe that's going to play out. I know it's a huge rally from here, but that's what I believe is going to play out here. I think I think Meta's way undervalued in this market, and I think going into the end of the year, I believe a lot of fund managers are going to have to chase this market. And additionally, since a stock like Meta is very undervalued, given the growth rates the company's putting up versus the forward Ps on the stock, I believe there's not going to be that much selling pressure in regards to Meta into year end. It just doesn't make sense to sell it. Plus, then you have to pay taxes. Why would you want to take a taxable gain on a stock that's undervalued right now that's likely in position to move higher? Doesn't make sense. So what I believe is going to play out with Meta is, Nvidia comes in with the banger and big tech in general moves, and I think Meta and Amazon could be the most well-positioned to benefit from that. And you could see a move for Meta up toward that $700 range. We'll see what it plays out. Obviously, as a long-term investor in Meta, holding 1,700 shares, and I have shares in other portfolios as well. Like if it doesn't happen and Meta's still at 550 come end of the year, it means nothing to me. If it's at 600 come end of the year, okay. If it's at 700, cool. Like it could be at $1,000 end of the year, like awesome. Like as a long-term investor, it doesn't mean that much. I'm just trying to project what I believe is going to play out here. So that's what I think. We'll see. It's going to be interesting in regards to that. And also, by the way, if you told me I had to play, let's say, 1 month out call options, if I had to play 1 month out call options, you force me, what am I going to do? I would rather play 1 month out call options, or let's just call it options into the end of the year. I'd rather buy on Meta than Nvidia, because Meta's already reported their earnings. I think a lot of people aren't expecting any sort of big move from Meta into year end, right? And so if that one gets moving, you get the fund managers start playing catch up to the market, I think the move for Meta could be extraordinary. And that would be very, very attractive. And then if we're talking about a situation in regards to Nvidia, the premiums are going to be big because everybody's expecting a big move on earnings. So people are thinking, like, what if that stock goes up 10, 15% when they report those earnings? Obviously sellers are going to take that into account. So the premium you're going to have to pay is huge versus Meta is probably a very low premium into year end. So if I had to buy calls on either one, if you forced me, I would much rather buy calls on Meta into the year end than Nvidia. I think the arbitrage there is much more attractive than Nvidia personally, right? So do keep that in mind. Alrighty, let's go ahead and react to a couple videos up here.
Crypto crushing it this week with Bitcoin back above the 91,000 mark and up 35% since the election. More on that in a few minutes. But first, what else? Nvidia, the AI darling, gearing up to deliver third quarter results next week, and Wall Street is chomping at the bit for another strong report. Analysts upping their price targets on the chip giant ahead of Wednesday's results. Wedbush seeing the stock climbing to 160, Oppenheimer's at 175, Susquehanna 180, and HSBC is all the way up at $200. That is 40% upside from today's close. But can Nvidia deliver another blowout quarter with expectations so high? Yet again, this is not the kind of action, Karen, that you love for one of your stocks going into earnings.
Well, yes, I don't like the analyst action. Yeah. That's what I mean. The bar, just raise the bar, raise the bar, raise the bar. I do like the, down kind of a lot.
Today.
Yes, the pullback, not just today, but the last couple of days. I think it hit 148 or 9 or something recently. And so I like that more. I think, there's this sort of tension of the promise of AI and is it working and what will demand peak, and then evidence to the contrary. And then you hear, things like, what it was, 100,000 chips today, right? So I'm still optimistic on the story. I am long. I don't have puts right now, so I don't know. I'll look at something. They're not going to be cheap, that's for sure. But I do think, though, going into the right before it, the skew will be toward the upside. The calls will be more expensive than the puts. So I'll look at that. But I'd rather have it be down a few days.
All right, Tim.
Well, if you look at the semiconductor group overall, they've been underperforming. NVIDIA's actually been really the stalwart in that space, and I think that's interesting. I get back to what seem to be the major drivers for the stock right now. Where are we on production with Blackwell? Where are we with hyperscalers and CapEx? We've had the earnings season where they've given some guidance.
By the way, for the first time in quite a while, I'm noticing an interesting phenomenon going on in regards to Nvidia and AMD. And this is the first time in several years that the risk-reward profile is more attractive for AMD stock, if you're looking out over the next 3, 4, 5 years, than it is for Nvidia stock. And that's the first time I could say that in many years. Because if we went back a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I could tell you like the multi-year kind of horizon was definitely much more attractive for Nvidia than AMD. But I believe that has now switched. And now like the risk reward, if we're just thinking over the next 3 years, never mind the next 5 years, I think it's much more attractive for AMD than Nvidia. So that is something to kind of keep in mind there. And once again, that's just my opinion in regards to looking at the numbers, what's going on with both those business models, kind of projecting what I think is going to transpire over the next few years. It's AMD is now more attractive than Nvidia for a 3-5 year basis.
This was fine. We've had some other read-throughs from other folks that are part of kind of the chip
not necessarily more attractive for the next 3 to 5 trading days, though. So keep that in mind.
Infrastructure space, which hasn't been terribly good. And it gets back to where is the market and where is sentiment. That outperformance I'm talking about on the charts is notable, but I don't get the sense that the street is as keyed up into expectations on this number for some of the reasons we've been talking about. And again, we have had the company be very clear to push back on any concerns around production side of it. So they can't really tell you how aggressively they see demand, and they'll do a better job of that here. I'm sure we're not going to hear anything awful on demand, but I think it's a more balanced setup despite the run in the stock, because I just think expectations are lower.
Eventually they have to fail on earnings. Eventually there's got to be something, right? So you don't get to go into Vegas and keep betting on one thing and have the hand perform. Eventually, but they're still 85% of the market. Tim said it.
You don't have to worry yet. And the reason you don't have to worry yet is because you have CapEx increases still coming from the big tech companies, right? They're almost all, they all are going to up their CapEx budgets again in 2025. So in terms of this worry about are they going to miss numbers or something like that, you don't have that yet. 2026, you at least start to enter in that conversation about, could they miss a number? Like, could they show slower growth? Those sorts of things. But for now, you just don't have it yet.
Other stock that you look at in the sector, the chart is horrendous. This is go ahead.
No, eventually you will miss, but is the miss a function of analysts getting too hyped up over it, and so therefore they're setting the stock up for a miss? If they didn't ratchet up their earnings expectations, they would easily jump over them. It's
without
all a matter,
question.
Right? It's the context of that.
It's a point of reference. It's where you're coming into it. So Karen's completely right. You would like them to talk it down. The problem is every time they've talked it down in the past, it's leaped over them. And they've looked silly.
I'm sorry, when you're saying the analysts talk it down or the
they don't
company,
really talk it. I'm saying it the wrong way. Whenever the analysts put out their estimates, they've definitely had a lower bar where Nvidia leaps over it, and they've looked ridiculous. Because who should know? They should know how high that bar should be in theory, and whenever Nvidia leaps over it, they look silly. So they keep raising the bar. So eventually, Nvidia has to fail.
Yeah, and one of the best, things if you want to be bullish on Nvidia going into year end is what I mentioned previously around the fund managers, right? It's one thing if Nvidia comes in, smashes numbers, conference calls great, Jensen says demand's going to be amazing forever, right? The next level is all these fund managers underperforming, trying to play catch up to the S&P 500, right? And where are you going to play catch up? You're going to play catch up probably in Nvidia because that's a stock that can move another 20%, 30%, 40%. If we get in a bullish cycle here into the year end, the last 6 weeks of the year, like who's to say Nvidia couldn't move, 20, 30, 40%? Like that's definitely doable, right? And the more the pile on happens, the more, investors just, keep buying it up. And once again, do you really want to sell? Do you really want to sell and take those losses right before the end of the year and go pay those taxes? I don't know.
It's going to be a beat and raise here. I mean, let's be clear.
It's just a matter of the degree.
Yeah, it's a matter of the degree, but again, I think it's really about Blackwell ramping.
And obviously since Trump won the election, there's not that big fear about like, well, what if they what if they up taxes? Like maybe we'll take profits now. No, it doesn't make sense.
And Hopper actually still growing, and I don't, yeah.
Yeah, Julie. I mean, Jensen Huang has had multiple opportunities to sort of talk down Blackwell, talk down the demand, talk down the production issues, whatever, and not one opportunity was taken.
Yeah, it sounds like he's very, very confident about the outlook. I think, it's interesting to me in reading some of the research reports that we've been talking about. I read one today that was like, well, we expect them to beat by their usual $2 billion on the top line, which is an astronomical number just to beat by. I mean, as a small and mid-cap investor, I could only dream, right? But what I think is important is exactly what everyone is saying, which is this relationship between expectations and execution. And so far, they have been on the right side of that battle between those two. But when you have analysts just so regularly expecting this big beat and raise, it does create this challenge, this tightrope walk that they have to do. I think the demand is fine, and I think the production is fine. What I think is kind of an outstanding question for the long term, and this is where guidance will really come into play, is what is pricing going to look like over the longer term? We know that these hyperscalers are starting to recognize that they need to be able to create an economic model around this investment, and that's still a little bit uncertain. And so, we kind of wait and see.
Yeah, well, as far as Microsoft and then OpenAI, they're going to keep spending. They got to keep spending, right? Microsoft's got to keep spending. OpenAI's got to keep spending. Like, there's no debate there. Tesla's got to keep spending because of what they're trying to do, right? So the money's going to keep flooding in. Meta's looks like the best ROI of everybody in the space, so they're going to keep spending on these chips. Amazon's got to keep spending from the AWS side, right? So once again, the fear about any slowdown in spending in the short term is not justified. 2026 is where you got to start to ask questions, and then especially 2027 in regards to growth rates and where those go from there. But for right now, we're just in this kind of sweet spot honeymoon phase of Nvidia where it's just like, the money's going to keep pouring in, right? All right, let's get into Palantir.
Time high today after announcing it will transfer its listing from the New York Stock Exchange to the Nasdaq on November 26th. The company also expects that it will meet the eligibility requirements for the Nasdaq 100. Today's 11% pop also rockets it past Vistra Energy, making it the best performer in the S&P 500 so far this year. Nvidia's now all the way down at number 3. But this is a huge jump after lots of huge jumps, particularly after its last earnings report.
Yeah, believe it or not, I actually nibbled a little bit more today to a position I've been long, and I can't justify the valuation at all. It's probably 35 times sales. It trades probably 2 times. Brent Hill, I'm looking at his note here. He says it trades 2 times what CrowdStrike trades at. So in terms of a multiple, in terms of a sales multiple. So I think it's a combination of the success they have going here. We're talking about, 3, maybe 4, maybe even 5 successive quarters where they've shown pretty incredible growth. That's part of the story here. Part of it also is truly where they seem to have the inside track on some of the choicest contracts in the world. And I do mean the government contracts. And I do mean the sense is that these are also some of the smartest guys in the room. So I hate the multiple. I've been longing the name for some time. I actually traded out of it a little bit after second quarter earnings and lamented every bit of that. And I've been trying to get myself back to where I was.
Yeah, well, they're getting 2 index boosts, right? Because it was added to the S&P 500 in September and now to the Nasdaq 100. So there's a little bit of just the technical aspect of the run, Julie, but there's also the huge fundamental government contracts to mention, huge, but also the unrelenting demand for AI, which is what Alex Karp, the CEO, has talked about. I mean, that's a big part of this.
Yeah, I think that's the narrative around that for everyone who missed out on NVIDIA. Everyone is looking for the opportunities around AI that have been overlooked, and this no longer is one of those plays. I would argue that there are probably plays that are better for AI than this. But what I think is, in the note that, Tim was referencing is in this valuation embedded is that this company can grow for several years at 40%, which is an acceleration from where it is right now, and still hold a 12 times sales multiple, which is high. That's a lot of good news that's priced in there. And so it's hard to feel confident saying, yeah, I would recommend stepping into this right now.
And that's why, in regards to Palantir, and obviously as a Palantir shareholder who's done phenomenal on this stock, I look at the stock myself, and I'll put it like this. Remember what I talked about before with Nvidia, right? After this year, I see the gains in the stock price being tough for the next several years, like the next 2 to 4 years. I think gains are going to be tough to come by in Nvidia, despite the business is going to keep expanding. This is exactly how I would describe Palantir, especially if the stock climbs to 70, 75 before year end. I think they'll set the stock up in just a brutal spot for the next 2 to 4 years, where the business could be making tremendous progress, and they're growing like everybody expects them to grow, maybe even stronger. But you're really not getting any gains in the stock because people are just not willing to pay that valuation. Just every single time the stock goes up anymore, like you get sellers to come in and put a good amount of selling pressure on it, and a lot of people aren't willing to buy despite however good the numbers are, just from the pure perspective of like the valuation so insane. And so I actually put Nvidia and Palantir into the same camp, where I believe gains are going to be very tough to come by basically after this year. Okay, so we'll see what plays out, but yeah.
Beal camp on this one as well. Let's think about what didn't come up? The Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, didn't come up here. 56% of their revenues is from the government. Do we think that revenue is going up or down or getting haggled? Do we have a person like Elon Musk, who is a tech savvy guy?
They're going to be cutting, though? I mean, I would think, if anything, that's an area where Doge would say, hey, wave some more in.
Or maybe you're doing it for X, and maybe you've got to do it for X minus 20%. I don't know. It's just something. Things look pretty peachy when I look at the chart and all the aspects of it. That would be the headwind I'd be worrying about.
No, I agree. I mean, I don't know that it's, just the math. I can't get around. There's a lot of things where I can't get to the math, and it ended up being great at every step of the way. But this is one that's, I mean, if you want to do the value play, Nvidia, I guess, relative to this. So that's right.
Yeah, and definitely, it does remind me a little bit of Tesla, a la late 2020 into 2021, right? Of just kind of like a very euphoric feeling around it. I'm seeing comments from people about everybody's going to be using Palantir and every company's going to be using Palantir, and that might be true, but that's a big statement, right? And I used to see those same sort of comments end of 2020 going into 2021. Everybody's going to own a Tesla, right? And it's like, okay, maybe that's true, but I mean, that takes a long time for that to play out, right? And obviously then business models go through tougher spots, and it just happens. Like you don't always just grow perfectly to the sky. Like there's tough parts that come in there. So we'll see, but it's been a fun ride. I know that for sure. Okay. All right. Appreciate you guys joining me as always. Thanks so much for being here. If you're looking to apply to join my private stock group, get access to all my premium courses, access to my Discord chat, the moves I'm making, all that good stuff. Plus, if you want us to bundle 1000xstocks.com software in there as well, the research platform, we could do that as well. Okay. So pin comment down there, fill out a form. We'll see if we can get you access to all that next week. Much love and have a great day.